The question is, why has $25 billion in American military spending, 65 days of strikes, a full naval blockade, and the deployment of hypersonic missile systems not produced Iranian capitulation? I have answered that question with China's dark fleet, with the yuan payment system, with Russia's dual-track diplomacy, with Iran's dual-tempo strategy. Every one of those answers is real and accurate. But every one of those answers is external. They explain what countries outside Iran are doing to sustain Iran's resistance. The sentence I dropped is the internal answer. The answer that exists inside Iran, regardless of what China or Russia or Pakistan does. Here is the sentence. The IRGC is not funded primarily through Iran's official budget. The IRGC has a commercial empire. Construction companies, import monopolies, energy subsidiaries that generates revenue independently.
I said that and moved on. I should not have moved on, because that sentence, fully explained, is the reason America's $25 billion campaign is not just failing externally. It is failing internally. It is hitting the wrong target. It has been hitting the wrong target for 70 consecutive days. And China knows exactly why America keeps hitting the wrong target. Because China is the primary financial partner of the entity America is not hitting. Here is what I want to walk you through. What the IRGC's commercial empire actually is, how large it actually is, how it connects to China's payment system, Iran's oil revenue, and Hormuz logistics infrastructure, and why the specific military options America has deployed, the strikes, the blockade, the final blow plan, do not touch any of it. Start with what the IRGC's commercial empire actually is, because the coverage treats it as a vague accusation, rather than a documented economic structure. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is not primarily a military organization. It is a military organization that controls a parallel economy estimated at between 20 and 40% of Iran's total GDP. The estimates vary because the empire is deliberately structured to be opaque, but the documented components are not speculative. Khatam al-Anbiya Construction Headquarters is the IRGC's primary commercial arm. It is one of the largest construction conglomerates in Iran and in the broader region. It has been awarded contracts worth tens of billions of dollars in Iranian infrastructure: dams, highways, pipelines, ports, tunnels, telecommunications networks. When Iran rebuilds infrastructure after strikes, Khatam al-Anbiya is frequently the entity that receives the reconstruction contract. American strikes destroy Iranian infrastructure. Khatam al-Anbiya rebuilds it. The IRGC gets paid twice, once to build the original structure and once to rebuild it after the bombs fall. The IRGC controls significant portions of Iran's telecommunications sector through entities connected to its intelligence and communications apparatus. It controls shipping and port logistics through affiliated companies that manage key Iranian port facilities, including infrastructure at Bandar Abbas and the broader Persian Gulf Coast. It controls import monopolies on specific categories of goods, electronics, pharmaceuticals, construction materials, that it distributes through networks that bypass Iran's official customs and trade tracking systems. It has interests in banking and financial services through entities connected to IRGC-affiliated foundations called bonyads, which are quasi-governmental charitable organizations that function as financial holding companies for IRGC commercial interests. I call it the shadow state within the state. And the shadow state has one structural feature that makes it specifically immune to the military pressure America has been applying. The shadow state does not appear in Iran's official budget. Its revenues are not tracked through Iran's official financial system. Its contracts are not awarded through Iran's official procurement process, in most cases. Its banking relationships are not visible through SWIFT or the dollar-denominated financial system that American sanctions target. America has the most sophisticated financial sanctions apparatus in human history. It can track individual transactions through the global banking system with precision.
It can identify specific accounts, specific institutions, specific individuals, and freeze their access to dollar-denominated finance within days. That apparatus has been deployed against Iran for decades with maximum intensity. And that apparatus does not see the shadow state, because the shadow state does not operate through the system the apparatus was built to monitor. Now, how China connects to the shadow state? Directly. This is the connection the channel has implied but never made explicit. China's dark fleet revenue, the 1.84 million barrels per day of Iranian crude that China's tanker network moves through yuan payment channels outside SWIFT, does not disappear into a general Iranian government account. It flows through specific channels. And those specific channels, based on the documented structure of how IRGC commercial entities receive and process revenue from Iran's oil sector, connect directly to IRGC-affiliated financial institutions.
Iran's oil sector is formally managed by the National Iranian Oil Company, NIOC. But the IRGC has carved out significant operational roles within the oil sector through affiliated entities that manage specific fields, specific loading operations, and specific export logistics. The dark fleet loading operations at Karg Island, the primary export terminal, involve logistics contractors and security arrangements that include IRGC-affiliated entities. The transfer operations in international waters that move Iranian crude from one tanker to another use coordination infrastructure that overlaps with IRGC maritime capabilities. When China's yuan payment system processes Iranian crude revenue, it is not sending payment to a neutral Iranian government account that the elected government controls and distributes through official budget channels. It is sending payment through mechanisms that route a portion of that revenue to IRGC-affiliated financial entities outside Iran's official budget. The specific routing is deliberately opaque, but the structural logic is not opaque. The IRGC controls enough of the oil sector's operational infrastructure that any oil revenue flowing outside official channels flows through a system the IRGC has access to. China's dark fleet is not just keeping Iran's economy alive. China's dark fleet is specifically funding the IRGC's operational capacity in ways that bypass both Iran's elected government and America's sanctions architecture simultaneously. America knows this. The Treasury Department's specific designations of Iranian entities name IRGC-affiliated companies connected to the oil sector. The designations are accurate and specific. They just do not address the yuan payment channel that China operates outside the dollar system those designations target. America can designate IRGC-affiliated entities in the dollar system. America cannot designate IRGC-affiliated entities in China's yuan system because China's yuan system does not recognize American designations as legally binding. The sanction exists. The target can see the sanction. The target simply uses a payment channel the sanction cannot reach. Now, what the shadow state means for America's military options specifically. Trump's final blow plan presented 3 options: short and powerful strikes targeting Iranian military assets and leadership, ground forces in Hormuz, special forces to seize Iran's enriched uranium. I analyzed each option in detail in a previous video. What I did not analyze is whether any of the 3 options targets the IRGC's commercial empire. None of them do. Not by design and not by accident. The short and powerful strikes target Iranian military infrastructure, missile facilities, air defense systems, command and control networks, leadership positions. The IRGC's construction conglomerate, al-Anbiya, is not on a military target list. Its offices are not military installations. Its contracts are not weapon systems. American strike doctrine does not target economic entities even when those entities are controlled by a designated terrorist organization, which the IRGC is under American law, because targeting economic entities produces civilian casualties and legal complications that military planners avoid.
The ground force option in Hormuz targets Iran's naval positioning in the strait. It does not touch the IRGC's import monopolies, its telecommunications interests, or its banking relationships with Bonyad-affiliated financial institutions. The uranium seizure option targets Iran's enriched nuclear material. It does not touch the revenue streams that fund the IRGC's capacity to rebuild its missile stockpile after any strike. All three options are military responses to military capabilities. The IRGC's shadow economy is not a military capability. It is the financial foundation that makes military capability regenerate after every strike. America destroys a missile facility. The IRGC's construction revenue funds the rebuild. America seizes enriched uranium. The IRGC's import monopoly provides the dual-use components for the next enrichment cycle. America maintains the naval blockade. The IRGC's Dark Fleet logistics infrastructure routes crude through channels the blockade does not intercept. The military options are precise and well executed. They are hitting the right military targets. They are not touching the economic engine that produces new military targets after each strike cycle. I call it the regeneration problem. America is fighting a war against an adversary whose military capability is regenerated by an economic system that American military options are not designed to address.
Let me steelman the argument that America has in fact targeted the IRGC's economic structure through its sanctions regime, and that the sanctions are working, even if the military options are not. The optimistic reading is that American financial sanctions on Iran have been the most comprehensive in history and have imposed genuine economic damage on the IRGC's commercial empire. The rial has weakened significantly. Iran's official trade is severely disrupted. The Banyad-affiliated financial institutions face sanctions that limit their access to international banking. Individual IRGC commanders and their family members face asset freezes. The cumulative effect of decades of financial pressure has degraded the IRGC's commercial capacity, even if it has not eliminated it. The steelman also argues that the sanctions work through a different mechanism than direct degradation. They work by imposing a premium on everything the IRGC does commercially. Every construction contract costs more to execute because imported equipment is more expensive under sanctions. Every import monopoly generates less profit because the smuggling infrastructure required to maintain it under sanctions has a cost. Every banking transaction requires more complex routing to avoid sanction exposure. The sanctions do not eliminate the shadow economy. They make it significantly less efficient and profitable than it would otherwise be. On China specifically, the steelman argues that Treasury's designation of Chinese financial institutions involved in Iranian payments is working at the margins. Individual Chinese banks and trading companies that have been designated have reduced their Iranian exposure. The designations create compliance costs for Chinese institutions that want to maintain dollar system access. The pressure is real, even if it is incomplete.
All three elements have genuine weight. American sanctions have imposed real costs on Iran's economy. The IRGC's commercial empire is more expensive to operate under sanctions than without them. Chinese financial institutions face genuine compliance pressure from American designations. But here is what the steelman cannot account for. The regeneration problem does not require the IRGC's commercial empire to be maximally efficient. It requires it to be sufficiently functional to fund military reconstruction between strike cycles. A shadow economy operating at 60% efficiency under sanctions is still a shadow economy that funds the IRGC's operational capacity at levels that prevent Iranian capitulation. The sanctions have degraded the empire's efficiency without degrading it below the threshold required for military regeneration. And the specific threshold that matters, the revenue level required to fund missile and drone stockpile reconstruction during a ceasefire, is the threshold that China's Dark Fleet revenue has specifically kept the empire above throughout this conflict. China's yuan payment channel does not make the IRGC's commercial empire maximally efficient. It makes it sufficiently funded. And sufficient is all the regeneration problem requires. Watch 3 signals that tell you whether America is beginning to address the shadow state directly. The first is whether any American action specifically targets al-Anbiya's operational capacity rather than its individual affiliates.
Treasury has designated Khatam al-Anbiya and many of its subsidiaries. Those designations restrict its dollar system access, which it largely does not use. Watch for any American action that specifically targets Khatam al-Anbiya's construction contracts with the Iranian government, its port management relationships, or its equipment supply chains from Chinese and Russian suppliers. An action that disrupts the shadow state's operational contracts rather than its dollar system banking relationships is America beginning to understand the regeneration problem. That action has not happened in 70 days of maximum pressure.
The second is whether any American strike in the final blow plan, if executed, includes Khatam al-Anbiya's construction and logistics facilities as named targets. American strike doctrine has clear categories of legitimate military targets. IRGC facilities are legitimate targets under American law because the IRGC is a designated terrorist organization. Khatam al-Anbiya is an IRGC entity. Its headquarters, its major operational facilities, and its port management infrastructure are legally targetable as IRGC assets. Watch whether any post-strike damage assessment following any final blow execution names Khatam al-Anbiya infrastructure as a target that was struck. If it does, America has identified the regeneration problem and is beginning to address it militarily. If all struck targets are described in military terms, missile facilities, air defense systems, command infrastructure, the regeneration engine is still running. The third is whether China's yuan payment routing to Iranian oil sector entities changes following the Xi summit. The dark fleet revenue flows through specific Chinese financial institution channels to specific Iranian recipient accounts. Some of those Iranian recipient accounts are connected to IRGC-affiliated oil sector entities, rather than the official NIOC account. Watch whether any post-summit reduction in dark fleet volumes is accompanied by any change in the financial routing of Iranian oil payments. A volume reduction without a routing change means China reduced the supply without changing who receives the revenue. A routing change that directs payments away from IRGC-affiliated accounts would mean China has specifically agreed to cut off the IRGC shadow economy rather than just reducing overall oil flow. The routing change is the more significant signal. It has not happened, it may never happen, but if it does happen, it means the Xi summit produced an agreement that goes significantly further than any public reporting has suggested.
Push back on this if you see it differently. Read the Treasury designation list for Iranian entities. Find Khatam al-Anbiya and its subsidiaries. Read the designation's own language about what this entity does: construction, logistics, port management, infrastructure. Read America's strike target lists from the past 65 days. Count the number of times Khatam al-Anbiya facilities appear as named targets. Read Iran's ceasefire reconstruction reports, the NBC and CNN confirmations that Iran rebuilt missile and drone stockpiles during the pause. Ask where the funding and construction capacity for that rebuild came from. Read the sentence I dropped in my earlier analysis. The IRGC has a commercial empire that generates revenue independently. And then ask the question that sentence requires. If the IRGC's commercial empire generates revenue independently of Iran's official budget, and if America's military options target Iran's official infrastructure, and if America's financial sanctions target Iran's dollar system connections, and if China's yuan payment system specifically routes dark fleet revenue through channels the dollar system cannot monitor, then what exactly is America's $25 billion campaign degrading? The answer is Iran's official military infrastructure, which the IRGC rebuilds using revenue from a shadow economy that America's military options are not targeting, and that China's payment system is specifically funding outside the reach of America's financial tools. America is spending $25 billion hitting the visible target. The invisible target? The IRGC's commercial empire, its construction capacity, its import networks, its IRGC-affiliated banking relationships processing dark fleet revenue in yuan, is running without interruption, while the visible target absorbs the strikes and gets rebuilt.
China is not ignorant of this structure. China has been Iran's primary economic partner for a decade. China's commercial entities have direct relationships with IRGC-affiliated companies through infrastructure investment contracts, construction partnerships, and trade relationships that predate this war. China knows what the IRGC's shadow economy is, how it functions, and how China's dark fleet revenue flows into it. China built its payment system to route around the dollar system specifically because the dollar system is what America uses to target the entities China wanted to protect. America has not touched the entity that funds the war. China knows exactly what that entity is. And the final blow plan, as currently designed, does not change either of those facts. The regeneration problem does not end when the ceasefire becomes permanent. It does not end when Hormuz reopens. It does not end when a partial deal is announced. The IRGC's commercial empire will be intact at the end of this war. Its construction capacity will be available for whatever reconstruction follows. Its import networks will resume operation the moment sanctions pressure reduces. Its financial relationships with China's commercial sector will persist through any deal, because no deal requires China to terminate commercial relationships with Iranian construction companies. America will announce a historic victory. Iran's official nuclear infrastructure will be dealt with through whatever arrangement Russia brokers. Hormuz will reopen on terms both sides can describe as acceptable. And the IRGC's shadow economy, the internal engine that funded 70 days of defiance, rebuilt the missile stockpile during the ceasefire, and processed China's dark fleet revenue outside every American monitoring system, will be exactly where it was on February 28th. Intact, funded, invisible, and ready for the next time America decides to apply maximum pressure. Watch what America does not say about the IRGC's commercial empire. The silence is the answer. America knows the empire exists. America has designated its entities. America has not found a way to touch it. And that gap between what America knows and what America's tools can reach is the same gap that China built its entire Iran strategy to exploit.